Paris was in total shock.
The deadliest attacks to hit France since World War II.
There's fear, there's disbelief.
In the first month that we arrived, every little noise or anything would kind of freak us out.
But the City of Lights, through it all, has found a way to stay alive.
Because it's a way to fight.
But tell us, with higher security, do you anticipate more racial profiling?
That's one of the problems for how we have a debate in this country about the participation of certain groups, religious groups, ethnic groups in the...
Bottom line is this: if you target and isolate a group of people, there's a better chance that they will become radicalized. We've seen this before, and we will see this again if we continue in this direction.
We are here today in the neighborhood of the Bataclan in the attempt of interviewing local businesses about the touristic aftermath of the attacks.
I'm not scared at all since I'm here, so it didn't affect me that much, I guess.
So we have to continue with our life, nobody will stop us.
So after the attacks in Paris, many things have changed.
I think the world has changed.
The world changes, but you still kind of have to roll with it.
Hello and welcome to PTV. I'm Phasia Hardy.
And I'm Beth Granis, and this is our special edition dedicated to the deadliest attacks to hit France since World War II.
The City of Lights were brought to a flicker as attackers invaded the streets of Paris, shooting and killing 130 people and a hail of bullets throughout the city.
Attackers also targeted the Bataclan music venue in Paris's trendy 11th arrondissement, taking hostages and murdering concertgoers.
Tonight, life is restored at the Bataclan as it reopens its doors. A performance from English pop star Sting marks the first show since the tragedy. Tara Jamali has more on this story.
It was cold and raining on the Bataclan reopening night as people came to weep. They came from all over France and Europe to pay their respects. Exactly a year ago, ISIS-controlled assailants murdered 90 concertgoers in a hail of Kalashnikov bullets. For a while, there was even doubt that the Bataclan would reopen at all. Security was tight on the anniversary of the attacks. A year onward, some still remain in shock.
Nobody was killed in my family, in my friends, but it's look like the same. I think, like a citoyen, I must be here.
Je ressens un grand moment de tristesse, mais un grand moment d'encouragement pour dire que tout doit continuer, reprendre normalement.
I'm super happy about the reopening of it, of course, because it's a way to fight what happened in last year.
J'ai l'impression qu'il y a plus de peur dans les rues de Paris, que les gens sont plus sur la défensive. Fluktuagnet mergitur, on tient debout.
There's a lot of emotion here. There's fear, disbelief, and many feel that a lot has changed since the attacks. But one thing is sure, and that the City of Light has found a way to stay alive through it all. Tara Jamali reporting.
In reaction to the devastation, office buildings, public spaces, and schools have adopted stricter security procedures. But just how does this affect our daily lives?
Julianne El Haj is at the American University of Paris to check out what precautions have been taken to ensure the safety and security of the students and staff.
So after the attacks in Paris, many things have changed in terms of security. We are now with Marc Monteillard, the Vice President for Security at the American University of Paris, to talk more about this. Marc, thank you for having us. Can you tell us more what has changed in terms of security at the AUP since last year?
I think the world has changed, and AUP, just like any other institution, has to adapt. This is not something that we are particularly happy about, but this is something we have to do. So basically, we have spent a lot of money, a lot of efforts to beef up the security processes, to make the community, the AUP community, safer.
Logistically, what have you installed this year?
Well, I'm not going to go into details for obvious reasons, but let it be said that it's a question of making any kind of intrusion more difficult, okay? And it's part of a deterrent so that people would look twice before trying to get into one of the AUP campus facilities.
So the university has a big responsibility on this level. What advice can you give to the students?
I think that everybody's got a responsibility, first of all, students, staff and faculty. I mean, the world has changed, and without becoming paranoid, because that's the last thing we want, we just got to make sure that we keep an eye on things that are not the way they should be and inform people, warn people. As far as advice is basically make sure that you understand and respect the procedures. Sometimes they're cumbersome, sometimes you're late to go to class and you want to, you'd love if you could just zoom through. So be careful, take all the exercises very seriously and trust that we are doing our best to ensure security to the whole community.
Marc Monteillard, the Vice President for Security, Operations and Student Services. Thank you so much for this interview. Back to you, Beth and Feja.
In a digital age where social media dominates communications, we now look into the alarming trend of how easily fear is triggered and now sweeps the world in a matter of seconds.
Our Paris Bureau Chief Alex Kerr spoke to Robert Payne, an international communications expert who has researched the role of social media in the Paris attacks.
Robert, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Alex.
The city, the country, and the world all saw this happen in real time on social media. What effect do you think that had?
Seeing these events in real time on social media had the effect of people probably feeling a lot more connected, even despite the possible distances across which they were experiencing the events. And also a sense of being able to participate in real-time live reactions. And I think that's one of the things that made this quite a different kind of event in media terms, is that interactivity, not of course in the events themselves, but in the moment-to-moment reactions that were taking place on Twitter and on Facebook and on other social media in such a way that is quite a new development for the ways in which we experience major public events and especially events of conflict.
Do you think that's actually encouraging or could possibly encourage terrorists to want to attack places like this again because they are getting such large media coverage?
In some ways, terrorism is a communication strategy. And so it makes perfect sense that terrorists, or whatever word we might like to use for such groups, are employing the same kinds of media and communication strategies as the forms of resistance that we see and the forms of reaction that we see. On the other hand, the ways in which social media are taking up the possibilities of hashtags and hashtag activism, as we've seen with a range of worldwide events over the last year or 2 years, may well be the answer to this. That is to say that a much broader population of individuals can participate in the process of talking about and debating the implications of an event in such a way that might actually lead to resistance of a greater kind.
Do you think there's a difference in the attitude on social media versus traditional media?
I think the difference between broadcast media and social media in this question of including all kinds of ethnic and religious groups into a broad conversation is that possibility of social media to open up its doors, if you like, to any number of people who would not previously have had access to promoting a message. And that seems to be a great opportunity to be able to speak more honestly about the population's actual composition. There hasn't been, I don't think, in this country a great amount of television, historically speaking, or other broadcast media that have honestly dealt with the presence of Muslims and other North Africans in the French population.
How do you think the attacks have shaped the relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims in this country?
The attacks may... Well, one thing that is probably worth noting as a side issue to that question is the fact that in this country, as you know, the official recognition of who is Muslim or non-Muslim doesn't really exist in terms of state documentation. So there's already a kind of a demographic problematic there, which is to say the state doesn't collect data on religion and ethnic background. But if we put that to one side, I think we probably do have an opportunity, at the very least, for a broader and a more rich and perhaps a more honest dialogue about the place of different religions, even if they're not necessarily recognized officially by the state, in numerical terms at least. because people are having to confront the other in a much more, again, hopefully honest way in the aftermath of these events. Part of the confrontation, of course, is going to be violent, either symbolically or really violent, and that, of course, is unfortunate. But I think the conversation is, partly due to social media as well, encompassing a much broader audience, and hopefully that will lead to a more realistic recognition of difference in a country that doesn't necessarily have a very realistic sense of its own internal divisions.
Thank you for joining me today, Robert.
Thank you very much.
And Alex is in the studio with us today. Welcome.
Thank you, ladies. So tell us, Alex, should the public surrender their civil liberty for better security?
Absolutely not. While increased security in Paris, for some people, may just be longer lines, increased police presence, perhaps inconvenient, for a lot of people in Paris, this means something else entirely, and it may be taking our civil liberties away.
But tell us, with higher security, do you anticipate more racial profiling?
I do. I believe that people who are Muslim or who look like they could be Muslim will be singled out in most areas of security.
So what's the bottom line?
The bottom line is this: if you target and isolate a group of people, there's a better chance that they will become radicalized. We've seen this before, and we will see this again if we continue in this direction.
Very insightful. Thank you. Paris Bureau Chief Alex Kerr.
Paris is the most visited city in the world, but have recent attacks affected tourism?
Our correspondent Leili Halabi spoke to tourists all over Paris, starting in the neighborhood of the attacks.
We are in the neighborhood of the Bataclan in the attempt of interviewing local businesses about the touristic aftermath of the attacks. It seems the owners feel the need to turn the page and start a new chapter, and rather not answer questions about the tragedy. But let's see how the tourists feel.
The terrorist attacks last year, did they affect you guys coming here at all?
No, not at all.
No? How do you feel about Paris today after the attacks?
Well, I have never been here before, so I don't know the change, but I don't feel anything strange or make you feel insecure or too much security.
We have seen a lot of security. There are a lot of military people around.
It doesn't make you feel
streets.
uncomfortable here.
At first it did. We've been here for 4 months now, and the first month that we arrived, every little noise or anything would kind of freak us out, but I think since we've been here for 4 months, we feel more comfortable than
things like that can happen inevitably, like anywhere you are.
As we know, tourism is a major income source for Paris. It ranks in the world's most visited cities. People come from all over the world to see its majestuous monuments, host many buildings, renowned museums, or historical shopping malls. So let's see if the attacks actually jeopardize one of the core bones of this city.
I'm not scared at all since I'm here, so it didn't affect me that much, I guess. But of course we were talking about it and thought about when we are coming here, how will, the police be...
Have you seen a lot of police presence? Or?
No, actually not. A few military guys by Notre Dame and also here by the Eiffel Tower.
Are you scared of coming back to Paris because of the attacks of last year?
No, because I think that we do not have to change our lives. We have to continue with our lives.
How do you feel about coming back to Paris after the attacks?
It's safe. You don't have to be scared.
Life, I think, still goes on. The world changes, but you still kind of have to roll with it.
This was Leili Halabi reporting.
It's important to remember these times, to consider security and how we can stay safe.
But it's important to also remember the French motto, liberté, égalité, fraternité. Ideals that are so severely being put to the test during these difficult times. I'm Beth Granis.
And I'm Faisha Hardy.
Thank you for watching PTV. Good night.
Good night.